September 4, 1944, Normandy, France. 2,100 hours. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery sits alone in his command caravan. The rain has stopped, but water still drips from the canvas roof with a rhythm like a ticking clock. The maps of Europe are spread before him, pins marking British divisions, Canadian divisions, American divisions, all the pieces of his grand chess game. But tonight, for the first time in his career, Montgomery is not thinking about tactics. He is thinking about power and the limits of it. 6 hours ago, he tried to fire a general. 6 hours ago, he delivered the death sentence every subordinate fears. Our ways must part, and the general refused to go. Montgomery stares at the empty chair across from him, where Harry Crerar sat this morning. The Canadian general's words still echo in the silence. Go ahead, try it. I'll consult Ottawa first. 8 words. That is all it took to checkmate a field marshal. Montgomery has broken German armies. He has commanded hundreds of thousands of men. He has reshaped the course of the war in Europe. But he could not break one quiet Canadian general who valued his dead more than his career. How did we get here? Montgomery wonders. The answer lies 2 years in the past, on a beach painted red. August 19th, 1942. Dieppe, France. The beach is painted red. Not with the soft watercolors of dawn breaking over the English Channel, but with something darker, something that cannot be washed away by the tide. 900 Canadian soldiers lie broken on the stones and sand of Blue Beach and Red Beach. Their blood seeps into the gaps between the pebbles, mixing with seawater that has turned from blue to crimson. By nightfall, the last transport ships will pull away from this cursed shore. They will leave behind more than bodies. They will leave behind the illusion that this war can be won cheaply, that Canadian lives can be spent like currency in someone else's bank account. But that reckoning will come later. For now, there is only silence, the kind of silence that follows catastrophe, the kind that makes men question God. London. War Office. 3 days later, the office smells of pipe tobacco and regret. Lieutenant General Harry Crerar sits behind a desk that is not his own, staring at a stack of papers that will haunt him for the rest of his life. Each sheet is identical. Each one begins with the same 9 words. The Department of National Defense regrets to inform you. 900 of them. Crerar is 56 years old. He has grey hair, a banker's methodical mind, and the bearing of a man who has spent his career organizing things rather than destroying them. He is not a warrior in the classical sense. He did not rise through the ranks by leading bayonet charges or winning duels of tactical brilliance. He rose by being competent, reliable, the kind of officer who makes sure the trains run on time and the supplies reach the front. But competence does not prepare a man for this. He signs the first letter, then the second. By the 10th, his hand has steadied, not because the pain has lessened, but because he has walled it off, compartmentalized it. The first letter is addressed to Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore of Regina, Saskatchewan. Her son, Jeffrey, was 19 years old. He played hockey. He wanted to be a doctor. He died on the shingle at Dieppe with a bullet through his chest. Crerar will remember that name for the rest of his life. He will remember all 900 names. 2 years later, September 1944, Normandy, France. The war has turned. General Harry Crerar, now 58, promoted to full general and given command of the 1st Canadian Army, stands in his headquarters in the French countryside and stares at a map of Europe. His army is part of Field Marshal Montgomery's 21st Army Group, responsible for the left flank of the Allied advance. They have fought their way across Normandy through brutal hedgerow country where every field is a fortress. They have closed the Falaise Gap, trapping tens of thousands of Germans. They have done their job. But the cost God, the cost. Crerar looks like a banker playing at being a general with his wire-rimmed glasses and meticulous attention to detail. His British counterparts sometimes mock him for it. They call him plodding, unimaginative, too cautious. They do not understand that caution is not cowardice, it is responsibility. Every soldier who dies under his command is a letter he has to sign. Every casualty is a telegram to a family who trusted him to bring their boy home. He learned that lesson at Dieppe. The message. The morning begins like any other. Coffee that tastes like burnt dirt, a briefing about German dispositions, a weather report predicting more rain. Then the messages arrive. The first is from Field Marshal Montgomery's headquarters. It is formal, official. Conference of Army Commanders, September 3rd, 0900 hours. Attendance mandatory. Topic: Scheldt Estuary operations. Crerar reads it twice. The Scheldt Estuary, the vital waterway that leads to the port of Antwerp. Montgomery wants to push north, to clear the Germans and open Antwerp to Allied shipping. It is a sound plan, a necessary plan. The operation will fall primarily to the 1st Canadian Army. It will be brutal. It will cost lives. Montgomery wants to discuss it, to give his orders. Attendance mandatory. Crerar sets the message aside and picks up the second. This one is from Major General Charles Foulkes, commander of the 2nd Canadian Division. The handwriting is less formal, more personal. Dieppe liberated. Memorial service September 3rd, 1000 hours. Presence of Army Commander requested to honor the fallen. Crerar's hand freezes. Dieppe. 2 years. It has been 2 years since that nightmare morning. 2 years since he sat in a London office signing 900 death notices. But Canada has not forgotten. The families have not forgotten. The 2nd Division has not forgotten. And now Dieppe has been liberated. The Germans have retreated. The town that was soaked in Canadian blood is now flying Canadian flags. The survivors want to hold a memorial. They are asking Crerar to be there. Crerar looks at the two messages side by side on his desk. September 3rd, 0900 hours. Montgomery's conference, September 3rd, 1000 hours. Dieppe Memorial. He cannot be in 2 places at once. The dilemma. Brigadier Churchill Mann enters the office without knocking. He is Crerar's chief of staff, a competent officer with a practical mind. He takes one look at Crerar's face and knows something is wrong. Sir? Crerar slides the 2 messages across the desk. Mann reads them. His jaw tightens. He sets them down carefully. Hell, he says quietly. Yes. They sit in silence. Outside, the sounds of headquarters continue. Typewriters clacking, officers shouting coordinates, the distant rumble of artillery. Finally, Mann speaks. Send me to the conference. I can take notes. Brief you afterward. Crerar shakes his head. Montgomery will see it as defiance. With respect, sir, Montgomery sees everything as defiance if it's not immediate obedience. Crerar almost smiles. Mann is not wrong. Bernard Montgomery is many things. A tactical genius, a meticulous planner, the man who broke Rommel at El Alamein, but he is not known for his flexibility. Then skip Dieppe, Mann continues. Send a representative. Major General Foulkes will understand. Crerar looks at the second message again, at the list of names attached. 900 names. No, he says quietly. I cannot. Mann leans forward. Sir, I understand the significance of Dieppe. But Montgomery commands the army group. If you miss his conference, then he will be angry. He will be more than angry. He will see it as insubordination, as you choosing Canadian sensibilities over Allied strategy. Crerar removes his glasses and pinches the bridge of his nose. He is tired. So very tired. Churchill, he says. They are alone, so formality can slip. If I do not go to Dieppe, what message does that send? What does it say to the mothers who lost their sons on that beach? It says you are fighting a war, sir. It says their sons' deaths do not matter. It says that Canadian blood is cheap, that we will spend it without remembrance, that we are still a colonial army dancing to a British tune. Man does not respond immediately. He understands chain of command, but he is also Canadian. He understands what Dieppe means. Montgomery will not see it that way, he says finally. No, to him it is a parade, a ceremony, a waste of time when there is a war to win. And to you, sir? Crerar puts his glasses back on. To me, it is the reason we are fighting. The risk. Before sending the message, Crerar sits alone in his office and considers what he is about to do. This is not the first time Montgomery has questioned his leadership. In August, after the Falaise Gap operation, the Field Marshal sent a terse communication suggesting that perhaps a more aggressive commander might better serve the Canadian Army's interests. It was not an official threat, but the implication was clear: step in line or step aside. Crerar had swallowed that insult. He had focused on the mission, proven his worth through results, and the matter had quietly been dropped. But this time is different. If he defies Montgomery's summons, there will be no quiet resolution. Montgomery will see it as a direct challenge to his authority, and he will respond with the full weight of his position. Crerar picks up the telephone, calls Ottawa. The connection crackles with distance. Prime Minister's office. This is General Crerar. I need to speak with the PM. A pause. Then Mackenzie King's voice, irritated at being disturbed. Harry, what is it? Sir, I am about to miss a mandatory conference called by Field Marshal Montgomery. I am choosing instead to attend the Dieppe Memorial. I wanted you to be aware, in case there are repercussions. Silence on the line. Then, Montgomery will try to have you removed. Yes, sir. Another pause. Crerar can hear King thinking, calculating the political implications. If he does, King says slowly, I will support you. But Harry, understand this. I can only protect you if you're right. If this blows up into a diplomatic crisis, you had better be able to justify why honoring the dead was more important than attending a staff meeting. I can, sir. Then go to Dieppe, honor our boys, and let Montgomery do his worst. Canada does not take orders from field marshals. The line clicks dead. Crerar sets down the phone and picks up his pen. The decision, Crerar writes the message carefully, officially. The kind of communication that goes up the chain of command and lands like a grenade. Field Marshal Montgomery, regret unable to attend conference September 3rd due to prior commitment. Brigadier Mann will attend in my stead with full authority to receive briefings, will coordinate with your staff following memorial service at Dieppe. Respectfully, HDG Crerar, General, 1st Canadian Army. He does not ask permission, he informs. Mann reads the message over his shoulder. Sir, are you certain? Crerar signs it. I am. Montgomery will... I know what Montgomery will do. Send it. Mann takes the message. He pauses at the door. For what it's worth, sir, I think you're doing the right thing. Crerar does not respond. There is no right thing in war. There are only choices, and every choice has a cost. The reaction, the message reaches Montgomery's headquarters 3 hours later. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery is 57 years old. He is short, wiry, with a sharp face and sharper eyes that miss nothing. He is a legend, the victor of El Alamein. He is also insufferable, arrogant, and utterly convinced of his own genius. He reads Crerar's message twice. Then he sets it down on his desk with controlled precision that precedes an explosion. Prior commitment, he says, to no one in particular. His voice is quiet. Dangerously quiet. His chief of staff, standing nearby, says nothing. He has seen this before. A parade, Montgomery continues, a ceremony, a memorial for a battle we lost 2 years ago. He stands abruptly. Who does he think he is? The question is rhetorical. Montgomery does not wait for an answer. He begins pacing, hands clasped behind his back. Crerar has defied him. Not openly, not insubordinately, but deliberately. He has chosen a Canadian event over an Allied conference. He has prioritized national sentiment over operational necessity. To Montgomery, this is not just a scheduling conflict. It is a statement, a line drawn in the sand. Send a message, he says. Tell General Crerar to report to my headquarters tomorrow, 0900 hours, alone. The message is sent. Montgomery returns to his maps. But his mind is not on the Scheldt. His mind is on the principle of command, the hierarchy, the order that must be maintained. He has broken generals before, Germans, Italians, even British officers who questioned his decisions. He will not be defied by a Canadian banker playing at soldier. Our ways must part, he thinks. If Crerar cannot understand his place in this command structure, then Crerar must go. Dieppe, September 3rd, 1944. The morning is grey and cold. General Harry Crerar stands at the entrance to the Dieppe War Cemetery and looks at 900 white crosses stretching into the distance. They are arranged in perfect rows. The grass is green, the flowers are fresh, but it is still a graveyard. The 2nd Division has assembled. Soldiers stand at attention in dress uniforms. They are the survivors, the men who made it off the beach, and they are the replacements. The young soldiers who carry the weight of a tragedy they did not witness but will never escape. Families have come from Canada, mothers and widows and orphans who have crossed an ocean. They wear black, they carry flowers, they cry quietly. Crerar takes his place at the head of the formation. Words will come later. For now, there is only the march past, the slow procession of soldiers moving past the graves, saluting their fallen brothers. As they march, Crerar's mind drifts. Jeffrey Whitmore, age 19, the boy who wanted to be a doctor. Duncan MacLeod, age 22, a farmer's son from Manitoba. Alistair Pembroke, age 20, an artist who carried a sketchbook in his pack. He remembers their names, all 900. They are burned into his memory like scars. The march past ends. A chaplain delivers a blessing. His voice is steady, but his eyes are red. Then it is Crerar's turn. He steps to the podium. He looks out at the assembled soldiers and families. He sees Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore standing in the front row, holding a photograph of her son. Crerar clears his throat. 2 years ago, he begins, 900 Canadian soldiers came to this beach. They came because they were ordered to, because their country asked them to, because they believed in something bigger than themselves. His voice is quiet, but it carries. They were not professional soldiers. They were farmers and factory workers, students and tradesmen, boys who had never seen war, thrust into the heart of it. He pauses. They did not fail. We failed them. A murmur ripples through the crowd. We failed them with bad intelligence, with poor planning, with hubris that cost lives we can never repay. And we have failed them since by moving forward without looking back, by treating Dieppe as a lesson learned rather than a debt owed. He looks directly at Mrs. Whitmore. Your sons deserved better. They deserved commanders who valued their lives as much as their courage. They deserved to come home. The ceremony continues, but Crerar barely hears it. His mind is elsewhere, on the message waiting for him. On the confrontation he knows is coming, Montgomery will be furious. He will see this as everything wrong with coalition warfare. But as Crerar stands among 900 graves, he knows he made the right choice. Some things are more important than tactics. The summons. Crerar returns to headquarters late that afternoon. The memorial lasted hours. Speeches, prayers, families laying flowers. It was exhausting in the way funerals always are. The message from Montgomery is waiting. General Crerar, report to Field Marshal Montgomery's headquarters. September 4th, 0900 hours, alone. Crerar reads it once, sets it down, removes his glasses and rubs his eyes. Brigadier Mann appears in the doorway. You've seen it? I have. What will you do? Crerar puts his glasses back on. I will report as ordered. Sir, Montgomery is going to be... I know what he's going to do, Churchill. He is going to relieve me of command. He is going to send me home in disgrace. He is going to make an example of me. Yeasted Mann steps into the office and closes the door. Then don't go. Call Ottawa. Get ahead of this. Crerar shakes his head. No, that would make this political. It would confirm every suspicion Montgomery has. It would weaken our position. Your position is already weakened. Perhaps, but I will not give him the satisfaction of running to Ottawa before he has said his piece. I will face him, man to man, and we will see what happens. Yeading Mann looks at his commander with something approaching awe. You're really going to walk into that lion's den? Crerar almost smiles. I walked into Dieppe this morning, Churchill. Compared to that, Montgomery is nothing. September 4th, 1944, 08:55 hours. The rain begins before dawn. It is the grey, relentless rain of autumn in northern France, the kind that soaks through wool and settles into bones. It drums against canvas with a rhythm that sounds like distant artillery. General Harry Crerar sits in the back of his staff car as it navigates muddy roads toward Montgomery's tactical headquarters. He does not speak. His driver knows better than to attempt conversation. Crerar watches the French countryside roll past through rain-streaked windows, fields scarred by tank treads, farmhouses with roofs blown off, trees stripped of leaves by shell fire. This is what liberation looks like up close. He checks his watch. 08:57 hours, 2 minutes. He has spent the night preparing for this meeting the way other men prepare for battle. He has reviewed operational reports. He has memorized casualty figures, supply statistics, ground gained per day. He has armed himself with facts. But he knows facts will not matter today. This is about power, about hierarchy, about a British field marshal reminding a Canadian general where he stands. The staff car stops outside Montgomery's headquarters. The caravan is smaller than Crerar expected, almost Spartan. Montgomery has never been one for luxury. Crerar steps out into the rain. He does not hurry. He walks with measured pace. A British major meets him. General Crerar, the field marshal is expecting you. This way, please. They do not exchange pleasantries. The major leads him through narrow confines, past clerks and junior officers. Everyone is very busy. No one meets Crerar's eyes. They know why he is here. The major stops at a door marked with Montgomery's name, knocks twice. Enter, comes the voice from within. The door closes behind Crerar with a sound like a cell locking. The caravan. The space is cramped. A desk covered with maps, folding chairs, a portable heater losing its battle against September chill. Walls lined with situation reports and photographs. Everything organized with mathematical precision. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery stands behind his desk. He does not sit. He does not offer Crerar a chair. He simply looks at the Canadian general with eyes that could cut glass. "Harry," he says, his voice is flat, neutral, the tone a surgeon might use before the first incision. "Sir?" Crerar comes to attention. "Sit down." Crerar sits. Montgomery remains standing. Height advantage. Psychological dominance. Tricks learned in the deserts of North Africa. For a long moment, neither speaks. Rain hammers the roof as somewhere outside, a truck engine refuses to start. Montgomery picks up a folder, opens it, reads, though Crerar suspects he already knows every word. "Let us discuss your performance," Montgomery says finally. Crerar's jaw tightens. This is not going to be about Dieppe, not immediately. Montgomery is too clever. He is going to build a case, brick by brick. "The Falaise Gap," Montgomery continues. "Your objective was to close the pocket and trap the German 7th Army. You were too slow. The enemy escaped." "We faced determined resistance," Crerar says evenly. "The German rear guard—" "Excuses," Montgomery cuts him off with surgical precision. "The British Second Army reached their objectives on schedule. The Americans reached theirs. Only the Canadians lagged. The terrain was difficult for everyone, Harry, but everyone else managed." Crerar forces himself to breathe slowly. He knows what Montgomery is doing. Apply pressure, force the subject to defend themselves, make them feel small. Montgomery sets down the folder and picks up another. "Casualties," he says. "Your divisions have suffered higher losses than projected. The 2nd Division alone has had to be reinforced twice since Normandy." "We have been given the hardest fighting," Crerar counters. "The bocage country, the fortified positions, we have faced SS divisions. While performing adequately, not excellently, adequately." Montgomery's voice remains calm, but there is steel beneath. "I need excellent commanders, Harry. Men who can execute operations with precision and speed. Men who understand that war is not a democracy where we discuss objectives over tea." The insult hangs in the air. Crerar's hands rest on his knees. His fingers do not tremble. He has faced worse than insults. He has faced 900 graves. "Sir, if you have concerns about my command, I am prepared to address them, but I would appreciate specificity rather than generalities." Montgomery closes the folder, walks to the map on the wall, stares at it. "The Scheldt operation," he says quietly. "Do you understand its importance?" "I do. Opening Antwerp is critical for Allied logistics. Without it, we cannot sustain the advance into Germany." "And yet you missed the conference where we discussed this operation, the conference where your presence was mandatory." Here it is, the real accusation. "I sent Brigadier Mann with full authority." Montgomery whirls around, fire in his eyes. "You sent a subordinate to a meeting of army commanders. You chose to attend a parade instead of doing your job." "It was not a parade." Crerar's voice remains steady, but gains an edge. "It was a memorial for 900 Canadian soldiers who died following British orders at Dieppe." "Ancient history." "Not to their mothers." The words land like a slap. Montgomery's face darkens. "Your job is not to comfort mothers, Harry. Your job is to command an army, to destroy the enemy, to win this war. Everything else is secondary." Crerar stands slowly. He is shorter than Montgomery, but he does not feel small. "With respect, sir, I disagree. My job is to command Canadian soldiers. That means understanding what they are fighting for. It means honoring those who came before. It means showing families back home that their sons' deaths mean something." "Sentimentality," Montgomery spits. "We do not have time for sentimentality. The Germans are regrouping. Every day we waste on ceremonies is a day they use to dig deeper. And every soldier who believes his commander sees him as expendable is a soldier who fights with one eye on the escape route. You can drive men with fear, sir, but you cannot lead them with it. Montgomery's jaw works. For a moment, Crerar thinks the field marshal might strike him. But Montgomery is too controlled for that. Instead, he walks back to his desk, sits down, folds his hands with the precision he uses to fold maps. "Harry," he says, and now his voice has changed, softer, almost gentle, the tone a father might use before telling his son the dog has died. "I have tried to be patient with you. I have made allowances for the fact that you are commanding a national army with political considerations I do not face, but my patience has limits." Crerar sits back down. He knows what is coming. "You have lost sight of what matters," Montgomery continues. "You prioritize politics over tactics, national pride over military necessity. You command as if you are an independent entity rather than a component of my army group." "I am an independent entity," Crerar says quietly. "The 1st Canadian Army answers to the Canadian government. We operate under your tactical direction, but we are not a British formation." Montgomery's eyes narrow. Semantics. Law. The word hangs between them. Montgomery leans back, studies Crerar with the expression of a man examining an interesting insect. "You are right," he says finally. "Legally you are correct. The Canadian Army is a sovereign force operating in coalition. But Harry, we are not in a courtroom, we are in the middle of a war. And in war there is only one law that matters, the chain of command." He stands, walks around the desk, stands directly in front of Crerar. "I cannot have a commander who puts national ceremonies ahead of operational conferences. I cannot have a general who questions every order through the lens of Canadian politics. I cannot work with a man I do not trust to be where I need him when I need him." Crerar looks up at the field marshal. Waits. Montgomery takes a breath. "Harry," he says, something almost like regret in his voice. "I have had enough." Silence. "Our ways must part." The sentence. In the rigid hierarchy of the British military establishment, those 4 words are a death sentence. They are polite, civilized, wrapped in the language of gentlemen who do not raise their voices. But every officer knows what they mean. You are finished. You will be relieved of command, sent home. Your career will end not with victory's glory, but with failure's stain. You will be the general who could not keep pace, the commander found wanting, the man who will spend the rest of his life explaining why he was sent home while others finished the war. Crerar sits very still. Montgomery returns to his desk. He is already moving on mentally, already thinking about who will replace Crerar. A British general, perhaps, someone reliable, someone who understands that orders are not suggestions. "I will inform the combined chiefs of staff," Montgomery says. "You will have 24 hours to arrange transition of command to your deputy. I will recommend you be reassigned to administrative duties in London. That way there is no public disgrace, no scandal, just a quiet change of personnel." He looks at Crerar expectantly, waiting for the traditional response, the stiff upper lip, the gracious acceptance of defeat. "Thank you, sir. I understand. I will begin preparations immediately." That is what Montgomery expects to hear. But Crerar does not say it. Instead, he asks a question. "Under what authority?" Montgomery blinks. "I beg your pardon?" "Under what authority are you relieving me of command?" Montgomery's expression shifts from surprise to irritation. "I am your superior officer." "You are my operational commander," Crerar corrects. "There is a difference. Don't play games with me, Harry. I am not playing games, sir. I am asking a legitimate question. Under what authority do you have the power to dismiss the commander of the 1st Canadian Army? Montgomery's face begins to redden. This is not how these conversations are supposed to go. You serve under my command, Montgomery says, voice rising. You are part of the 21st Army Group. If I determine that a commander is not fit for his position, I have every right to relieve him. You have the right to relieve me of tactical duties, Crerar agrees. You can remove me from the order of battle. You can assign the 1st Canadian Army to a different sector, but you cannot fire me. Only Ottawa can do that. Montgomery stares at him. What did you say? Crerar stands slowly. He is not defiant. He is not angry. He is simply stating facts with calm precision. The 1st Canadian Army operates under the Visiting Forces Act and the agreements signed between the British and Canadian governments. Those agreements stipulate that while Canadian forces are under British operational control, for combat operations, all personnel decisions, including the dismissal of senior commanders, remain the purview of the Canadian government. That is bureaucratic nonsense. That is law. Crerar's voice cuts through Montgomery's protest like a scalpel. You command what my army does, sir. Ottawa commands who my army is. Montgomery's hands grip the edge of his desk. Are you refusing a direct order? I am clarifying the limits of your authority. The limits of my... Montgomery stops himself, takes a breath, forces calm. Harry, if you are suggesting that I cannot discipline officers under my command, I am suggesting that you cannot dismiss me without the approval of the Canadian War Cabinet. You are welcome to request my removal, you are welcome to lodge a formal complaint with Prime Minister King, but you cannot simply declare our ways must part and expect me to pack my bags. For the first time in the conversation, Montgomery looks uncertain. Crerar presses forward, not aggressively, just relentlessly. If you attempt to relieve me unilaterally, I will be forced to consult with Ottawa before complying, and when I do, Prime Minister King will want to know why the British Field Marshal is dismissing the commander of the Canadian Army. He will want to know if it is because of tactical incompetence or because I chose to honour 900 dead Canadians instead of attending a staff meeting. This is not about Dieppe. It is entirely about Dieppe. You said it yourself. I missed your conference to attend a memorial. That is the core of your complaint. Everything else is window dressing. Montgomery's face is fully red now. His famous composure is cracking. You are twisting my words. I am repeating them. Crerar takes a step closer. He does not raise his voice. Sir, I respect your command. I will follow your tactical orders. I will execute the Scheldt operation to the best of my ability. But I will not be bullied into resigning because I chose to honour my dead. Montgomery's mouth opens, closes, opens again. Are you threatening me? No, sir. I am stating a fact. And then Crerar plays his final card, the nuclear option. Go ahead, try it. Pause. I'll consult Ottawa first. The eruption. Montgomery does not throw things or shout. Bernard Law, Montgomery is far too controlled for that, but the fury is there, burning beneath the surface like magma. You dare, he stops, breathes. You dare to threaten political intervention in a military matter. I am not threatening anything. I am explaining the consequences of your proposed action. The consequences? Montgomery laughs without humour. Let me explain consequences to you, Harry. If you go running to Ottawa, if you turn this into a political circus, you will destroy your own career. The Canadian public will see you as the general who could not handle criticism, who hid behind his government skirts. Crerar shakes his head slowly. With respect, sir, I do not think that is how the Canadian public will see it. Oh, and how will they see it? They will see it as the British Field Marshal who fired their general for attending a memorial to Dieppe. They will see it as the Empire treating Canadian lives as expendable. Again. The word again lands like a grenade. Montgomery's eyes widen. He is beginning to understand. Crerar continues, voice still calm. The story will be in every newspaper from Halifax to Vancouver. British commander dismisses Canadian general for honouring war dead.
How do you think Prime Minister King will respond to that headline? How do you think the Canadian War Cabinet will respond? They will see a replay of every colonial grievance they have spent 20 years trying to escape. They will see proof that Britain still views Canada as a subordinate, not a partner, and they will react accordingly. Montgomery's jaw clenches. King would not dare withdraw Canadian forces, perhaps not, but he would demand your removal.
And he would get it. Silence. Rain continues to drum against the roof. Somewhere outside, men are fighting and dying. But in this cramped caravan, the only battle that matters is between these two men. Crerar watches realization dawn in Montgomery's eyes. The field marshal is trapped. If he backs down, he loses face. But if he forces the issue, he triggers a political crisis that could destroy him far more thoroughly than it destroys Crerar. Winston Churchill is already frustrated with Montgomery's ego clashes. Eisenhower barely tolerates him. The Americans think he is insufferable. One more political incident, especially involving the Commonwealth, and Montgomery will find himself reassigned to a desk in London, watching other men win the war. Montgomery sits down heavily. For the first time in the conversation, he looks old, tired. "You have thought this through," he says quietly. "I have. You came here prepared to burn everything down rather than accept dismissal. I came here prepared to protect my command and the integrity of the Canadian Army." Montgomery stares at his maps, at the pins and flags representing thousands of men, at the tactical problems he is so brilliant at solving. But this is not a tactical problem. This is politics, and politics is not his strength. "If I relieve you of duties," he says slowly, "you will call Ottawa." "Yes, sir." "If I request your removal through official channels, Ottawa will refuse and demand to know why." "Yes, sir." "And if I make this about Dieppe specifically, I hand Canada a propaganda victory that undermines Allied unity." Crerar does not respond. Montgomery is working through the logic himself. Finally, the field marshal looks up. "You have outmaneuvered me, Harry. Congratulations." There is no warmth in the words, just cold acknowledgement of reality. Crerar remains at attention. "I take no pleasure in this, sir. I respect you enormously. Your tactical brilliance is unmatched, but I cannot allow respect to become servitude." Montgomery's hands grip the desk edge. "Very well," he says, through clenched teeth. "Very well. Our ways will not part, not today. But do not mistake this for forgiveness, Harry. Do not mistake this for anything except strategic necessity." "I understand, sir. You will execute the Scheldt operation. You will do it with maximum efficiency and minimum casualties. You will prove to me that your presence at Dieppe was worth the price of this conflict." "Yes, sir." Montgomery stands. The meeting is over. "Dismissed." Crerar salutes. Montgomery returns it mechanically. As Crerar turns to leave, Montgomery speaks once more. "Harry," Crerar pauses, "this changes nothing between us. We will work together professionally, but I will never forget this day, and I suspect neither will you." Crerar meets the field marshal's eyes one last time. "No, sir, I will not." He walks out into the rain. Aftermath. The drive back is silent. Crerar sits in the staff car and watches rain streak the windows. His hands are steady. His breathing is calm. But inside he feels as if he has just survived a battle. He did not win. Not really. Montgomery is still his superior officer. The power dynamic has not fundamentally changed. The Scheldt operation will still be brutal, but he did not lose either. He stood his ground. He drew a line. He made it clear that the 1st Canadian Army is not a colonial force to be directed at will. It is a sovereign partner. And that partnership has terms. When he arrives at headquarters, Brigadier Mann is waiting. "Well?" Crerar removes his wet overcoat and hands it to an aide. "We had a conversation. It was frank." "And I am still in command," Mann exhales slowly. "Jesus. How?" Crerar allows himself a small, tired smile. "I played the Ottawa card," and Montgomery blinked. Mann stares at him with something approaching awe. "You magnificent bastard, you actually did it." I reminded him of reality. There is a difference. Crerar walks to his office, sits at his desk, looks at the map of the Scheldt estuary, at the flooded polders and fortified positions, at the nightmare awaiting his army. "Get me the divisional commanders," he says. "We have an operation to plan, and we are going to execute it so brilliantly that Montgomery will never question my competence again." Mann grins. "Now that is the kind of revenge I can respect." October 1944, the Scheldt estuary. Hell is not fire and brimstone. Hell is cold water rising past your knees. Hell is mud that sucks at your boots, trying to drag you down. Hell is fighting an enemy you can barely see across flooded polders where every dike is a fortress. Hell is the Scheldt. The 1st Canadian Army has been tasked with clearing the estuary to the port of Antwerp. On paper, it is simple. Sweep the Germans from islands and coastal positions. Open the waterway, on paper. In reality, it is a meat grinder. The Germans have had months to prepare. They have flooded the lowlands deliberately. They have fortified every position, planted mines by the thousands. They know if they lose Antwerp, they lose the war. So they fight with the desperation of men who have nothing left. General Harry Crerar stands in his command post, studying reports that read like casualty lists. The 2nd Division is bogged down at Woensdrecht. The 3rd struggles to cross the Leopold Canal. The 4th takes devastating fire from Walcheren Island. Every day brings new numbers, new names, new letters to be written. But Crerar does not waver. He knows what Montgomery is waiting for. The Field Marshal is watching with hawk intensity, waiting for Crerar to fail, waiting for proof that his assessment was correct, that the Canadian general is too cautious, too slow, too political. Crerar will not give him that satisfaction. He drives his divisions forward with relentless precision. Not recklessly, he is not trying to prove anything through bloodshed, but methodically. Every attack is planned, every objective achievable. He rotates units to prevent exhaustion. He ensures supply lines remain open. He visits the front lines himself, walking through mud and shell fire to look his soldiers in the eyes and tell them their sacrifices matter. And slowly, painfully, the Scheldt operation succeeds. The 2nd Division takes Woensdrecht after days of brutal fighting. The 3rd crosses the Leopold Canal in a nighttime assault that costs hundreds of lives but breaks the German line. The 4th, supported by British commandos, storms Walcheren beaches in an operation that rivals D-Day in complexity and courage. By early November, the estuary is clear. Minesweepers begin their work. The first Allied convoy sails to Antwerp on November 28, 1944. The supply crisis is over. Field Marshal Montgomery sends a brief message. Operation successful. Well done. 5 words. No warmth, just professional recognition. Crerar reads the message and sets it aside. He does not need Montgomery's approval. He has something more important, the knowledge that his soldiers accomplished the impossible without compromising his principles. December 1944. A cold peace. The relationship between Montgomery and Crerar never recovers. They work together for the war's remainder with cold professionalism. Montgomery issues orders. Crerar executes them. They communicate through staff officers whenever possible, avoiding direct contact except when necessary. But something fundamental has changed. Montgomery no longer treats the Canadian Army as a colonial appendage. He consults Crerar about operations affecting Canadian forces. He listens, not always agreeing, but listening, when Crerar raises concerns. He has learned, however grudgingly, that sovereignty is not just words in a legal document. It is reality that must be respected. Other Commonwealth commanders notice, the Australians, the New Zealanders, the South Africans. They watch as the Canadian general stands toe-to-toe with the British Field Marshal and emerges unbowed. They see that it is possible to be both a good ally and an independent nation. The precedent spreads like ripples in a pond. In staff meetings, when Montgomery makes demands that disregard national concerns, commanders begin to push back, politely, professionally, but firmly. They cite the Canadian example. The Empire is learning to become an alliance, and it is learning because one man stood in a rain-soaked caravan and refused to be dismissed. April 1945. The Netherlands. The war in Europe is ending. The German army is collapsing. Russians are in Berlin. Hitler hides in his bunker, issuing orders to armies that no longer exist. The Third Reich is in death throes. The 1st Canadian Army is in the Netherlands, liberating a nation that has suffered 5 years of Nazi occupation. They advance through towns where Dutch civilians line streets, weeping with joy, throwing flowers at soldiers who have freed them. Crerar watches his troops march through Amsterdam and sees something he has not seen in years: pure, uncomplicated gratitude. In Apeldoorn, an elderly Dutch woman approaches Crerar as he walks through the town square. She is thin, worn by years of hunger, but her eyes are bright. She takes his hand and speaks in broken English. "Thank you," she says. "Thank you for not forgetting us. Thank you for coming." Crerar, who has remained stoic through bombardments and battles, who stood unmoved facing Montgomery's fury, feels his throat tighten. "Ma'am," he says quietly, "it was an honor." She kisses his hand, then turns and walks away, disappearing into celebrating crowds. Crerar stands in the square and realizes something profound. This is why he chose Dieppe. This moment, this connection between soldiers and the people they serve. This understanding that war is not just tactics and supply lines, but humanity defending humanity. Montgomery could never understand that. For all his brilliance, the Field Marshal sees war as a mathematical equation. He does not see faces, he does not hear stories, he does not carry the weight of individual lives. But Crerar does, and in this moment, he knows he made the right choice. May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. The guns fall silent. At 11:01 p.m. on May 7th, Germany signs unconditional surrender. The next day is declared Victory in Europe Day. The 1st Canadian Army holds its victory parade in the Netherlands, where they are guests of honor. Dutch children wave Canadian flags. Families hang banners thanking liberators. Old men stand with tears streaming, saluting soldiers young enough to be grandsons. Crerar takes the salute. He watches his divisions march past, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 1st Polish Armoured, and thinks of all the names that are not here. Soldiers who fell in Normandy, at the Scheldt, in the Rhineland. They paid the price for this moment. After the parade, he returns to headquarters for the last time. Staff is already packing. The war in Europe is over, but administration continues. Units must be demobilized. Soldiers sent home. Are you thinking about? Crerar is silent. What are you thinking about? Crerar is silent. Then, Dieppe? Man nods. He understands. 900 men died there, Crerar continues. They died because someone thought a raid was worth the cost, and for 2 years their sacrifice was treated as a lesson learned rather than a debt owed. But you honored them, Man says, when it mattered most. I honored them, Crerar agrees, and nearly lost my command for it. But you didn't. You stood your ground. You showed everyone that Canadian lives are not expendable, that we are not a colonial army. That was worth the risk. Crerar looks at his chief of staff, this man who stood beside him through every crisis. What will you do now? Man shrugs. Return to civilian life. Try to remember what peace feels like.
You? The same. Go home, retire quietly. You'll be remembered, sir, as the man who stood up to Montgomery, who defended Canadian sovereignty. Crerar shakes his head. I hope to be remembered as something simpler, Churchill, as a man who honored his dead. June 1945. The last meeting. Before leaving Europe, Crerar receives one final summons to Montgomery's headquarters. He goes without hesitation. The war is over. Tensions have faded.
Whatever animosity existed has been buried under victory's weight. Montgomery's caravan is being packed when Crerar arrives. The field marshal supervises personally. He looks older than a year ago. The war has aged everyone. Harry, Montgomery says when he sees Crerar. No formality, just simple use of a first name. Sir? They walk together into the Dutch countryside, where spring flowers bloom in fields that were battlegrounds weeks ago. For a long time, neither speaks. They simply walk, two old soldiers who survived a war that killed millions. Finally, Montgomery breaks silence. I was wrong about you, he says. Crerar looks at him in surprise. Montgomery does not apologize.